Hey everybody, before we get started, I just want to remind you that this episode is brought to you by our patrons, like Miruru. If you like what we do and want to see us do more, consider supporting us on Patreon. You can get access to episodes early and lots of other goodies, and it would really help us out. Thanks for your support. That's right, everyone. It's time once again for Let's Talk FGO Wanted, the show where we talk about upcoming 5 stars and let you know if you want them or not. Or maybe you already want them and we let you know why it's a good idea to roll for them anyway. As a quick reminder, even though it's not been very long since we did one of these, the format of the show basically goes, we talk about the actual mythological history of the character, we talk about any connections and lore they have in the Fate universe specifically, we talk about their mechanics, because some of these servants can be very useful, and then we talk about how rare they are, to let you know if you really should roll on this upcoming banner or not, or, if you're gonna miss it, when's your next chance to roll. And today we'll be talking about Scathach. So, obviously, usual caveat, much like Kintoki. Yes, I know, this isn't the first time Scathach's banner is run, but this is the first time it's run since we started doing Wanted, so now's the perfect time to do a feature, because you guys love these videos. Why are you complaining that it's here? So nobody ever. Seriously, I don't think I've ever gotten any. Though if you do have any questions, comments, or concerns, be feel to drop those. And yes, the name is pronounced Scathach, even though the way it's written. I do not blame anybody who calls her Shisho instead, because it's slightly easier. But that's where we are. So, let's just jump into it. No time to preamble. And actually, I think this episode's going to be on the shorter side, because starting with mythology, our folkloric background on Scathach actually seems a little thin from my, basic level research that I need to do to make this show. Like, obviously, I didn't go to the library and start digging around, but I did some scanning, some scoping out. And our primary sources for Scathach comes from the Ulster Cycle. That's Irish mythology. She is a warrior woman and a martial arts teacher from what is historically seen as Scotland. The actual name just translates to the Alps, but that's what they meant by Scotland specifically. She is said to reside on the Isle of Skye, which is an actual island. And double bonus fact, there is actually a, Dunska castle. Her Land of Shadows castle, the Fortress of Shadows, is actually supposed to be there, or a castle ruin that is attributed to her. So hey, with this upcoming banner, if anybody's in the neighborhood, you might want to pop by. It would be a great catalyst for summoning. Anyway, the primary knowledge of her comes from the wooing of Emer, or Emer. My Celtic pronunciation's not top tier, despite the fact that I'm doing this video. You're going to hear a lot of Celtic-y names. Which is one of the stories involving Cuchulainn. And unfortunately, there are only a couple of versions of the story, a long form and a short form, who have survived. So, the short version is that she is a teacher who Ku is sent to learn from. She teaches him various techniques with the spear and other martial arts and so on, and gives him the Gable, which is a spear of her design, which is why she still has them as Noble Phantasm, because Fate goes with the interpretation that that's a thing she makes and a technique she teaches, not necessarily a specific item. Anyway, we'll get into that in a second. Let's see. Other than that, she doesn't really appear too much, though I believe in some versions she also teaches Ku's son Kanla. But the other thing is that I found some references that she might even be a psychopomp-type figure who finds the souls of, dead warriors and escorts them to the afterlife. Not a lot of reference on that, though. But given that Fate seems to have run with the idea that the Land of Shadows, or the Fortress of Shadows, is populated by the dead or the undead or something like that, that's probably something to consider. They probably saw it. Also, talking about her mythological background, I'm gotta be honest, I'm not sure why there aren't more Scathachfaces, because, one, she officially has a daughter, which I'm gonna assume, since there's no pronunciation guide, is just Uahak, or Uak? There's a U and an A in it. But she becomes a lover of Ku, so that's kind of interesting that she's not in there, as an interesting figure. And there's also Scathach's rival and sister, Aoife, and yes, that is how you say that. That's not how you spell that, but that's how you say that. Who is at least an equal, if not better, fighter than her, and eventually Ku's baby mama. But that's a very interesting thing, because seriously, that would be so cool. Did you know Scathach's name is related to Shadow, and Aoife's name is related to Radiance? They're like literal opposites. It's perfect. Why the fuck aren't you doing anything with that, Lightworks? Or various Type Moon writers? Anyway, let's move on from the mythology, because like I said, there's not actually a whole hell of a lot here. Just a couple of background mentions and so on. She's She's a supporting character mostly, it seems like, though very popular in pop culture and fiction. You've seen her a few places. Scathach is a Persona in the Persona series, stuff like that. Let's move into Fate. So, I will be honest, it seems like Scathach's been wanked on a little bit as far as power levels go. No, not that way. Well, also that way, based on some images I found while seeing if there were any references I wanted to use. But hey, Google image search is fun. Anyway, Scathach is seen as a very powerful figure, obviously, because the way mystery and stuff works. She's obviously older than Ku. She has more skill than him to teach him, but not necessarily, because she can only fight Aoife to a standstill, and Aoife even beats up Ku, but that's an entirely different thing. Now we'll be talking about another character's power levels. But obviously she has that connection to the various forms of Ku that appear and several other figures from Irish mythology. She's regarded as a teacher there also. Her mastery over the dead definitely seems to be a thing that's interpreted through some fringe stuff. Also, I think the idea that she's an immortal came from the fact that, from a mythological standpoint, she's never depicted as dying. She just exists, possibly for several generations. So, there's not really a lot of mention of her necessarily being, like, divine or anything. And in fact, as you can see, she doesn't have the divinity skill in game or anything. But yeah, it mostly just seems to be a reference to the fact that she never officially dies and just exists in an external place, which is kind of associated with ghosts or the dead or something. Gotta be honest, not really sure where the mythological leg up here is. But that's how it is. And then, obviously, because of that, you know, she is an older figure who has the more original version of stuff, so she's more... That's how it is. She appears in FGO originally. She's a character who appears in the America chapter. She had a trial quest before that. She also appeared in the Garden of Order event, but that's not a big deal. The big story association is with America, as you might expect from the fact that she was a featured servant, I guess, in the key visual for the Part 1 of FGO. So it's really interesting. She is also going to be in the upcoming Extella Link, so that'll be fun. Other than that, like I said, she's a character who is OG to FGO. Not a lot of other Fate associations. So now let's move on to mechanics. So you can see Scathach's stats up here. Pretty good. Decent HP pool. Fairly average attack pool. Her Star Gen and Star Absorb seem fairly moderate. Her Star Absorption is decently high, but not as high as, say, like, some higher level Assassins and Sabers, for instance. But it'll beat out lots of lower levels. It's very average. Her NP charge gain is not terrible. It's very middling. There are definitely lower servants than her, but there are definitely higher servants than her. And the real way that hurts her is the fact that she's only got one arts card, and her quick and arts hits are relatively small. They're, you know, they could be seen as standard, but it's only a couple of hits, or 3 for her single arts card. Not as much as their buster cards, which obviously you're not generating a lot of NP on anyway. Though her extra attack is a whopping 7 hits. She's also a rare star-type servant, so that can be pretty useful. Other than that, yeah, you can see all her stats and stuff. She's got quick, arts, buster deck. Definitely a focus on that quick and that buster. She deals damage and generates stars, theoretically. Her NP is, of course, the famous Gable alternative, which is a fairly big hit for being a quick, but it's a single target, got a big damage multiplier, which with her decent attack stat is pretty good. It also has what should be a guaranteed stun. It's a 500% chance to stun for 1 turn, so your enemy has to have, like, crazy good debuff resistance for that not to... Or you have to be, like, debuff inflict down or something crazy like that. Anyway. Also, got a chance to inflict instant death. Gonna be honest, not great. It's 100% chance at 500% charge, which obviously doesn't actually mean 100% because there's a whole, like, inherent death resistance and stuff involved in there, and yeah, it's... Listen, never count on the instant death occurring. Especially if you're not a Shiki who has skills that make enemy death resist go down. Just saying. Speaking of skills, Scathach is a decent kit. You can see it right here. Her starting skill is Wisdom of Dunno how to say that. But, obviously, yes, it's an 80% chance skill to proc. But it's got a fairly quick cooldown, so it's okay. And if it does proc, it's pretty good. It increases her critical damage from 30% starting to 50%, so that's a pretty good... And it drastically increases her gather rate, like, from 300% to 500%. So, unless you were also using another crit gather up, this basically guarantees that Scathach will be sucking up those crit stars that you're making. So, perfect if you've got a lot of crit stars and you want her to crit, basically. And then it also guaranteed applies evade to yourself for 1 turn. Not as good as some other skills, but definitely a very good survival skill. which is great to have, especially since you probably might want to stall out a little sometimes. Then her second skill, unlocked at First Ascension, is her version of the Primordial Rune. It's called that because Brynn has her own version of Primordial Rune. But this is basically a targetable quick buff. It's no, like, Quick Merlin, but this is pretty key to a lot of quick support strats, even if you're just quick supporting Scathach herself. It goes from a 30% to a 50% quick increase. So, fairly decent increase. Not as good as some alternates, but it's targetable, so that's very useful. You will probably be using it to target on herself a lot, though. And then finally, her last skill, Godslayer, which increases attack damage versus Divine and Undead, also relatively low cooldown. This goes from basically times 1.5 damage to times 2 damage at 10, and given the kind of damage her single target NP can deal, especially since you can also juice her up with Quick, oh baby, we're talking some big damage. The Undead is, I think, mobs only, pretty sure, but there are a couple of bosses it could be useful for. I think that was a thing in, like, Garden of Order. There were a couple of big ghosty bosses that Scathach was ideal for dealing with. And then, of course, the Divine is a fairly widespread trait among both NPCs and servants. So, you can see from this sort of kit, Scathach really is a boss killer. You use her when you want to do big slam and burst damage. You know, you pile on the quick buff and the Divine buff, and then you drop her NP. Maybe you drop some crits at the same time, or you wait till the next turn, because it's a quick NP. So, theoretically, you know, you'll generate some quick cards with some stars. You can move on, and then the next turn you can pop that to try and suck up the stars and do a crit, but it's not guaranteed. So she's big damage in short bursts. And I say bursts because, like I said, one arts card, okay NP gen. It'd be how it be. And of course, she only has the one passive skill and fairly normal magic resistance, though her rank is quite high, so it gives her a little bit of debuff resist to slide off that stuff. Not really much else to say there. Her kit is fairly self-explanatory. Just look at that. It's like card effectiveness, attack effectiveness, and then, you know, crit effectiveness. It's all just Scathach does work. I've seen this phrased as that Scathach is kind of selfish, and that can be true. Her one skill obviously can affect anybody, but it also works on herself. So given her build, you will probably be using it on her. You use other people to make sure she can actually drop her NP and maybe maximize the stars generated so she can vacuum them up, stuff like that. Now let's talk about campaigns. So despite the fact that Scathach is a poster child servant, or maybe because of it, she's actually quite rare. So obviously there was a Scathach introductory campaign which came with her trial quest. That already happened. That was the special Thanksgiving event in the US, and it was slightly later in JP. And we missed the redistribution of her at New Year's in America, because the server wasn't really out other places in North America then, which is unfortunate. I'm hoping that because they've included some Western Pacific countries, maybe we'll go back to New Year's being a big deal, because it's more of a big deal over there. So let's hope. I know it's not as a big deal here, because guess what? Next is the 3 million, which is about to drop. That's why we're making this video. And then the other two campaigns are the next 2 Happy New Years for Japan. So we better be hoping that New Year's gains some prominence. Otherwise, Scathach banners are looking pretty dicey. Though when limited servants are included in the paid gachas, she does tend to show up, obviously. But that can be a fairly wide strike pool, so don't count on it. And there's the video. Hope you enjoyed it. You know, if you got any comments about any of that, go ahead and drop that down there. If you perhaps have come across any references in the original mythology as to why Scathach is so awesome and great and kills gods and everything, you know, go and let me know. I'm always eager to learn more. And just in general, yeah, you probably weren't swayed if you weren't going to roll for Scathach for some reason to roll for her, and you were already going to roll for her, but hey, we make these videos because people like them. And if you like this video, go ahead and leave a like down below. And also, don't forget to leave any comments. Like I said, you can also jump into our Discord. That link is in the description. So, of course, you can check out lots of back-and-forth interaction with the community and with us at the channel directly. Great way to get in touch with us quick. And as always, if you are new here and if not already, please subscribe. And also don't forget to hit that bell for notifications. It's a great way to keep track of our videos. You can also support us on Patreon. That's a great way to get access to videos early and lots of other little goodies and integrations. Love that sort of stuff. Early looks at things. Abilities to decide topics. Stuff like that. We do also have a merch store. That's in the description. We don't mention that necessarily all the time. Though I do believe Master Artman Lucky has got it in his head to do some kind of Scathach drawing. I don't know if we're going to turn that into a thing. But maybe. Maybe you can put it on a pillow. Who knows? You can put his Astrophoto design on a pillow. So check that out. And I will see you in the actual Let's Talk FGO show. And also, whenever Wanted appears next. Guess what? It's probably going to be Raikou. but it might be Da Vinci. We don't know for sure.